Hello and welcome back to my channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. Setting Sun, Rising Moon, Chapter 1. Chapter 1, On Death, Career Changes, and Memories of Youthful Indiscretions. Ichigo died. He sat up. Well. That was easier than I thought it would be. I'm impressed you managed it. Rukia smirked at him as he stood. You've been pretty hard to kill in the past. I wasn't 77 in the past, he said. He glanced at his still, silent body that lay on the bed he died in, then down at his soul's form, which from his vantage point appeared considerably younger. Ha! I look a lot more handsome now. She just smiled. You know, you've kept important people waiting a long time. Ah, pipe down, I had things to do. He looked away from the body and flexed his arms experimentally. The arthritis was gone. He hadn't been able to move this easily in years. Rukia still looked the same, that face that hadn't changed since the day they'd met but had somehow grown younger to him as he'd aged. That, exasperated by human foolishness but deigning to tolerate it, expression. It had been a long time since she'd looked at him like that. He'd missed it more than he'd realized. So you're here instead of the local Shinigami, huh? You must have missed me. Of course not, she scoffed. You're too annoying to miss. And you're too bossy. Idiot. Beach. They glared at each other, but Ichigo could see the corners of Rukia's mouth turning up, and as if by mutual agreement, they broke into grins. So, are you ready to do this thing? He asked. Rukia nodded. I'll see you soon. Aren't you coming with me? She shook her head. Every soul has to do this alone. In one smooth motion, she unsheathed Shirayuki and smacked his forehead with the end of her hilt. It tingled where she struck. But the world around him dissolved. When he felt the ground under his feet again, he looked down to see that he was still wearing his faded pajamas and hospital robe instead of a proper black uniform. He hadn't realized that he would arrive in Soul Society without one. Rukia probably had. Trust her not to mention that detail. It only took one glance to tell him he stood in Rukongai. The current residents barely spared the newcomer a glance as they passed by. He didn't look like anything special, and with their lack of spiritual sense, they couldn't tell he was a Shinigami. And he was, even then his blade was nowhere in sight, but Ichigo could still feel Zangetsu resting in his mind, deep and silent but a little closer to the surface than he had been in many years. It's all right, Asen, he said. Take your time waking up. He turned his attention to what was around him. He needed to find Siriidii, but he had no idea how to get there. He didn't recognize the buildings around him. It would be too much to hope that he could find Ganju for a drink, a brawl, and directions. A strange pang struck him then. The last time he'd arrived in Soul Society feeling this lost, he'd at least had his friends by his side. Chad, Inoue, Ishida. It had been a while since he'd been fit to keep in contact, but as far as he knew, he couldn't expect to find them here. Not yet. For the moment, he was on his own. Well, there was only one other way to do it. He looked up, squinting against the sun, and spotted the tip of Senzaikyu far, far in the distance. He stuck his hands in his pockets and started walking. It was a hot day with little breeze, so he was sweating lightly within a few minutes, but it felt good just to be outside. Fresh air was supposed to be good for you, and Ichigo believed it. It certainly felt better in his lungs than the sterile, circulated air of the hospital had. The people he passed looked clean and the buildings were well kept. This had to be a lower-numbered district. That should make the trip easier. He'd be at Siriidii in no time. 5 hours later, he was sweaty, tired, and in a pissier mood than when he was Fenji dying, but with perseverance and a few inquiries to the souls that lived closer to Siriidii, he'd finally made it to one of the gates. Eastern, by the look of the shadows the walls cast. It was closed, but there was no giant ape-like guardian in sight, so Ichigo just headed toward it, figuring he'd decide what to do next when he got there. He should have worried. The gate swung up when he arrived, but instead of Rukia it was Zaraki Kenpachi who stood behind it, with that vice-captain of his perched on his shoulder like a tiny pink demon. Zaraki grinned. "Welcome to Soul Society, Kurosaki," he said. "We can finally fight again." Ichigo swore. "No way," he said firmly. "I'm done with that." Zaraki's grin grew bigger, if that was possible. "You're dead this time. You can't run away anymore. What are you even doing here? Where's the gatekeeper?" Kenchan gave him the day off. Yachiru announced. "Kenchan's been looking forward to this for decades. I don't even have my Zanpakuto, you loon." "Captain Zaraki." Rukia's voice rang out as she ran up to the gate from the inside. Ichigo thought he had never been so happy to see her. Harassing newly arrived souls is strictly forbidden. "Bah, I'm just preparing him." He turned to go, his expectant grin never wavering. "After all, I want him to be as strong as possible when we fight again. Bye-bye, Vice-Captain Shorty." "Bye, Ichi." Yachiru waved enthusiastically from her position on Zaraki's shoulder until they were out of sight. A stray thought about kids these days having no respect flashed through his brain, but he shook it off. "Sorry about that." Rukia shook her head. "I knew he wanted to challenge you, but frankly, I assumed they'd get lost. We can go now." "About time," he said. He started to move, then stopped. "Wait. Did she call you?" "Yes." "As if she is one to speak of height." She rolled her eyes. "But then, Vice-Captain Kusajishi has never had any sense of irony." "Huh. I have invited her to call me by my given name more than once, but she persists in." "Not that," he said. "The other part." "Oh." A smirk spread across her face. "Don't gape like that at a vice-captain, Ichigo. It's unbecoming." He shut his mouth with a click. "Well, hey. Congratulations." He wanted to ask how long it had been, what had finally prompted it, why she hadn't told him when it did. He'd been infirm, not deaf, but she spoke before he could continue. "Thank you." She nodded. "Come on. This way." When he'd come to Soul Society to rescue Rukia, Ichigo had explored one of the lower western districts of Rukongai. The souls who lived there were poor but clean, and he'd been impressed with how nice things looked, considering. The Kuchiki estate went way beyond that. Ichigo could barely tell they were inside Siriidii once they passed through the gate. The path they took to the main house wound around sprawling gardens and meticulously landscaped yards. Everything was so orderly, not a pebble out of place or weed where one shouldn't be. There wasn't anything splashy, but he could tell it took serious money to keep everything looking so rigidly perfect. "Nice digs," he said as Rukia led him on. "They suffice," she said. "As vice-captain, I am entitled to private quarters in the 13th Division barracks, but I still spend time here out of propriety." "Right." He stretched his legs, enjoying the slower pace now that he wasn't hurrying to meet anyone. It had been a while since he'd been able to take a walk like this under his own power. Getting pushed around in a wheelchair by thoughtful grandnieces was nice, but it didn't qualify, and at the end there had been no walks at all. Right now, he felt like he could walk forever. So this is what it's like to be dead. Does it feel different being here? Pretty much the same as last time, he said. Feels good to be able to move around easy on my own again. Nice to be here, I guess. Kinda weird at the same time. Oh. Well, yeah. He fidgeted. I thought it'd feel more like the old days, but it's like my brain hasn't made the connection yet. I keep expecting to need a walker or something. Rukia looked amused. Would you have preferred to remain an invalid? Hell no. Glad I didn't pop out old. My creaky bones wouldn't be much good in a fight then. Be thankful for your spiritual abilities. Those who have them arrive at Soul Society in their prime and age at will. Without them, you would have spent your time here as you did in life. Ichigo shuddered. I did get pretty used to being old. Not much choice, you know. But I never got to like it. He shrugged. It feels good to be here. Been a long time since I last visited. You're not a visitor anymore, though, she said. This is your world now. His world the same as hers. For once, they'd have that in common. Heh. I guess it is. You find it amusing? Not really, he said. I was just thinking. He stuck his hands in his pockets and searched for the right words. Living in Seoul society for good. Guess I didn't think it would ever really happen. She looked away. Everyone dies eventually. Dying's the easy part. I'm not so sure about what comes next. She was quiet for a moment before smiling. You can start by changing out of those ridiculous pajamas. Hey. They're comfortable. And if you'd bothered to bring something for me to wear, I wouldn't be in them. I am not your fashion consultant. No, you're just the girl who can't go 5 minutes without busting my ball. Someone has to. She grinned. He realized he was grinning, too. It almost slipped as he looked down at her. He'd almost forgotten what it was like to be around Rukia like this, the camaraderie, the comfortable bickering. It didn't feel completely natural, yet he still felt like he should be a grumpy old man, and it had been a long time since they'd talked like this. But it was still reassuring in its way. Like something once lost that he was starting to believe he could find again. Come on, let's go inside, Rukia said. I'll give you the tour. The interior of the Kuchiki mansion reminded Ichigo a lot of its owner, tastefully sparse. There were a few decorations, a wall scroll here, an exquisitely carved table there, but nothing to make the place look lived in. Servants hung about, ready when they were needed but otherwise fading into the background. Their master was nowhere to be seen. Rukia assured him that Byakuya would be pleased to see him. Really, it was just that he was tied up with captain business at the moment. Ichigo had his doubts. So how is everything in Seoul society going? He asked. Uncover any more secret conspiracies lately? Rukia shot him one of her special looks. All conspiracies are secret, idiot, she said. Things are calm, though I doubt that will last now that you're here. Hey. You do tend to stir things up, Ichigo. It's not me who started things last time, he retorted. But I'm just a normal Shinigami like the rest of you now. Rukia laughed. I doubt anyone would ever describe you as normal. Her expression cleared. Actually, that's something I needed to talk to you about. I was going to wait and let you acclimate, but I suppose now's as good a time as any. Eh? He raised an eyebrow. Sounds serious. It is, in a way, she said. It was recently announced that Captain Hisagi is to ascend to a seat in the Central 46. Who? Hisagi Shuhei, she said. He replaced Aizen as captain of the 5th Division after the war. I know I told you this when it happened. Probably. He frowned, trying to jog his hazy memory. Tattooed guy? Yes, the tattooed guy. You fought on his side, Ichigo, you should remember who he is. You know I'm lousy at remembering names. You'll have to get better if you want to be a captain of the Godiai 13, she said sharply. He nodded. Ah. Right. That what? He stopped abruptly in the middle of the hall they were in, wheeling around to face her. Someone has to be captain, and now you are here. She paused. It never occurred to you that this might happen? No. He gaped at her as he fumbled for words. I thought I'd just die and then do the same stuff I used to, only I wouldn't have to worry about my body. And they want to make me a captain? Why? Rukia looked at him as if he'd lost his mind. You're more than qualified, she said. You are a skilled fighter. You achieved Bankai in record time. You have the ability to lead and inspire respect in those who follow you. You demonstrated all these qualities decades ago. You should have expected to be made captain. He glared at her. Yeah, well, I didn't. It's a huge responsibility. Since when have you been one to run from responsibility? It's not like that. Look, all you Soul Society guys have your own way of doing things. There's this whole structure of things I don't know anything about. I just come in and smash all the rules and do it my way. That's not really what they should be looking for in a leader. I might be a Shinigami, but I was never really part of the group. You are an idiot, Rukia snapped. She leaned closer, hands firmly on her hips, and Ichigo felt like she was bearing down on him with disapproval, as physically impossible as that would be. Of course you weren't part of the group, as you say. You had the rest of your life to live. Everyone respected that. But you're here now, Ichigo. What would you like to do instead? Run off on your own, ignore your duty? That stung. No. But that doesn't mean I have to be a captain. It's not an either-or thing. It is in this case, she said. To be offered a captaincy is a tremendous honor. To turn it down for the sake of your own unfounded misgivings would be an equally tremendous insult. I thought you said I deserved it. That does not lessen the honor, she said sternly. Her voice carried through the still, silent air, and he wondered briefly if the servants were listening or if they'd been trained not to hear private arguments. Look, it's not like I want to insult anyone, he said. I just don't want them to make the wrong choice just 'cause I kicked some butt when I was a kid. Rukia gave him a long, piercing look, one that meant she was about to say something important, and he well better listen. You are an idiot, she said again, because you insist on being blind to your own worth. The captains of the Gotei 13 are not stupid, Ichigo. They know you. They believe in you. And so do I. You've been proving yourself since the day you took on my duties. Ichigo faltered. He felt his cheeks heat up. That was different. Is it? She tilted her head to one side. You always wanted to protect people. How many more people do you think you can protect as a captain working with Soul Society instead of on your own? Is dealing with a ton of paperwork going to help with that? You take things so literally. Her expression softened into what looked like the beginnings of a smile, though the sternness didn't leave her eyes. There's more to protecting people than running around slicing hollows to ribbons. You might not get your hands as bloody, but since when has that been the most important thing? Still. It's not like I really fit in well last time I was here, Rukia. Yes. And that is why this is so important, she said. You saw how things were, how easy it was for Aizen to manipulate everyone. Soul Society's foundation is strong, but... She looked away for a moment, and he knew how hard it was for her to say this. But we must make sure such a thing can never happen again. You fought Soul Society with an outsider's eyes and helped reveal the truth. We still need that, to keep protecting people, the way you protected me then. He wanted to say something, to protest further, but it was very difficult to form words when she was looking at him with such absolute confidence. I don't know how to be a captain. She made a face and kicked him in the shin. Is that all you're worried about? Idiot. We'll train you, of course. You thought we'd just give you a captain's Haori and turn you loose? He rolled his eyes. Hell yeah. You've already got Zaraki running around. She kicked him again. We do. And he agreed that you should be the next captain. They all did. It was unanimous among the other captains. Really? Even your tight-butted brother? Rukia gave him a, continue and I'll flash freeze you, look. Yes, Ni-sama agreed. That is what unanimous means. I know that. I just have a hard time believing that your brother of all people would. A wave of Ryatsu stopped him from continuing. That I would what, exactly? Ichigo turned to see Kuchiki Byakuya standing in the doorway, his standard, bored and better than you, expression firmly in place. Good evening, Rukia, Kurosaki, he said, not waiting for Ichigo's answer. Welcome to Soul Society and to my home. Will you be joining us for dinner? Yes, Nai-sama, Rukia answered for him. I think he should stay here tonight as well. His guest quarters won't be ready until tomorrow. Byakuya nodded. I will have the servants prepare a room. Was he really just polite to me? Ichigo hissed once Byakuya had left. She elbowed him in the side. Shut up, idiot. He respects you, you know, in his own way. Now come on, you've got to change before dinner. Change? Into what? Into the proper attire. She grinned. You're a full-time Shinigami now, Ichigo. You've got to look the part. Dinner was about as uncomfortable as Ichigo had imagined it would be. Byakuya said very little and Rukia followed his lead, leaving Ichigo to feel hopelessly outclassed. The Kuchiki family even ate gracefully. At least the food was good. The guest room Rukia led him to afterwards was as sparsely furnished as the rest of the place, but he didn't need much more than a futon. If you need anything, I'll be just down the hall, she said. Rukia, he said, stopping her as she turned to leave. Yes. He wasn't actually sure what he wanted to say. There was a time when he wouldn't have had to say anything. Rukia had always been good at reading him, better than anyone else. But that was a long time ago. Good night, he finally said. Good night, Ichigo. He watched her go to her own room before entering his. There didn't seem to be anything to do other than undress and go to bed, so he did. He was kind of tired, now that he thought about it. Dying took a lot out of a guy. Yet he couldn't bring himself to actually fall asleep. He lay there and stared at the ceiling, all that had happened and all that was going to happen swirling through his mind. He was lost in thought when he heard a loud click come from the direction of the door. He could feel Byakuya's Ryatsu moving away. Ichigo stared for a moment before sighing and closing his eyes. For all that Rukia professed Byakuya's newfound respect, it seemed the guy still had some reservations. Ichigo had no doubt that if he got up to check, the door would be locked from the outside, all in the name of preventing Ichigo from sneaking into Byakuya's little sister's room for more hospitality than Byakuya wanted her to offer. Ichigo rolled over to sleep. He couldn't blame the stuffed shirt. He'd been tempted to do the same with a few of Karen and Yuzu's boyfriends, after all. It was just too bad that Byakuya was over 50 years too late. Ichigo didn't usually remember his dreams with any kind of clarity, and when he did, they never made much sense. Maybe it was something about Soul Society's inherently spiritual nature, or maybe it was just being around Rukia again, but the memories washed over him as he lay there, strong enough that they didn't seem to stop when he fell asleep. They'd been so young. Him more than her, but even with the decades she'd already had on him, he couldn't think of her as anything else when he looked back. It had been a while since he'd seen her face to face. She'd still had duties in the living world from time to time, but she'd never been reinstated as Karakura's Shinigami after that disastrous first assignment, and with the Aizen thing over and done with, she had less reason to be there. He'd missed her, a hell of a lot sometimes, but the epic battles were done and they each had their own world to return to. She went to Soul Society, he went to college. He discovered dating and did a little of it, though nothing really stuck with the girls he knew. Rukia still came to see him when she could and they'd go on the hunt together, purifying hollows and performing Konso all night and talking until dawn when they could find no more. It was almost like the old days, until she'd have to leave again. And then, at the beginning of one weekend in the spring, she showed up unexpectedly and announced that she wanted to see more of this university thing that took up so much of his time. She'd even procured a jigai for the occasion. He'd shown her around the place, introduced her to friends who didn't know about spirits and Soul Society and didn't understand what such a hot chick was doing with Ichigo. It had been fun. It felt right to have Rukia around again, sharing his life beyond the stolen hours as a Shinigami representative. He hadn't planned for it to be anything more than a nice weekend with an old friend, hadn't planned to kiss her, nor thought of how he'd react when she kissed him upon returning from Ichigo's favorite sake bar. He'd loved Rukia for a long time, but had never let himself think of being in love with her. He'd gone out and lived his life. He knew there were steps to this sort of thing. Go on a date, start with a few kisses. That didn't stop him from unbuttoning her blouse and slipping her bra straps off the shoulders of her false body when she pressed herself against him. He saw it again in his dreams, the details hazier, but still remembered the way she'd flushed as she undressed him, the expression on her face when he tried to stop them both to go to the drugstore for a condom. The ache in his skull when she'd hit him and explained why it was unnecessary. In his mind, Ichigo was in the middle of losing his virginity when he glanced over to see Zangetsu leaning against the wall, viewing the proceedings with a critical eye. "Asen," he shouted. What are you doing here?" "I've always been here, Ichigo," the Zanpakuto made manifest said coolly. "Always with you. But you weren't here." "I remember this didn't happen." Zangetsu shook his head and strode over. "Ichigo," he said. "Do you really think I could sleep through this?" He tapped Ichigo sharply on the head and suddenly the world went sideways. Ichigo crashed off the bed, but if the Rukia in his dreams noticed, he couldn't tell, because the walls dissolved and he was falling, rushing past the glass windows of skyscrapers. Ichigo sat up. It was morning. A quick look around the guest room assured him that he was still dead and, unfortunately, not in the middle of getting any. Though his body didn't seem to have gotten that message. He stood up to find a bathroom for a cold shower. Byakuya probably would have sent someone to unlock the door by this time, but if he hadn't, he'd bust it open now and apologize later. He stopped when he saw Zangetsu in sword form, this time leaning against the wall like he had always been there. Like he belonged there. He grinned. "Morning, Asen." Soul Society already felt a little more like home. Ichigo was dying. It had been a long time coming, but when the news reached her division, Rukia had to sit back for several minutes to absorb it. It wasn't that she hadn't expected this day to come, for all the rules he'd broken in his lifetime, not even Ichigo could cheat death forever. It was just that she'd never realized what it would feel like to know that he would soon be a part of her world. She was thankful for the advance notice. Soul Society had always kept an eye on Ichigo and the humans who had once fought with him. They had seen him live out his natural life, and while the power of his spirit seemed like it would go on forever, his body would not. He was an old man. What hair was left on his head was white and thin. And he was dying. Soul Society would finally have a place for the man who could have been a captain when he was just a boy. They kept him under constant watch for the last weeks of his life, even as plans were made for his death. Then one day, not long before sunset, Captain Yukitake had asked her to join him outside his private office. Unusual, given that all of their professional interaction normally took place in the proper place, but he did have a sentimental side. He seemed relaxed when she joined him in strolling along the koi pond. In the newly fine weather of the blooming spring, even the fish seemed more energetic, darting about in the water. "I thought you should know that Ichigo will soon be dead," Yukitake said without preamble. "Reports are that he has days, at most. We'll bring him to Siriidii immediately, of course, but there's the matter of his soul burial." "I will do it," Rukia said immediately. Yukitake nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "I thought you would. But there is another matter. I suppose you don't know that Captain Hisagi has been asked to join the Central 46. "I hadn't heard. It was a surprise to me as well," he said. "I believe he will excel in the position. But that leaves us with an opening. For Ichigo." She understood immediately. "You want him to be a captain?" Yukitake nodded. "There are a number of things that must be done. First, he will need an adjustment PRD, and it will be some weeks before Shuhei takes up his new position." "When was this decided?" "Just today, but it's been under discussion for a while now," he said. Captain Zaraki was especially enthusiastic. She bit back a smile. "That should help Ichigo get back to fighting fitness quickly." "I thought so." Yukitake smiled. "As I said, there are a number of things to deal with, but I thought you should know immediately, considering your history." At the moment, Rukia felt that history bearing down on her. "Thank you, sir." Soon after, word came that it was time. She stepped through the gate to the living world, Shirayuki at her side, and went to him. The man who lay in bed was weak, but his Ryatsu still pulsed strongly around him. He slept deeply, his breath shallow and growing shallower. She watched and waited for the end to come. Just before it did, around an hour later, he opened his eyes and focused on her. He smiled, before closing them one last time. The morning after Ichigo died, Rukia delayed getting up as long as possible. It could have been called dawdling, save that Kuchiki did not dawdle. She could have told herself she had an excuse. She'd slept poorly, drifting in and out of dreams that she remembered only a little and wasn't sure she wanted to recall further. But that would be lying to herself, and she tried to do less of that these days. She didn't want to see Ichigo and she did. It had been years since they'd talked, longer since they'd said anything worth the air it took to form the words. But here in Soul Society, his soul's form was not the man she'd watched grow up, grow old. Ichigo was young again, intense and vital. It shook her in ways she thought she'd put behind her. No. That was long over. Whatever had passed between them years ago, he was her friend now, and like any new soul, he'd need to adjust to Soul Society. It was her duty to help with that, not think about that whatever she was not going to think about. She stood and left for the baths. A cold rinse would do her good. Ichigo was lurking about the hall when she emerged, clean and dressed. "Hey," he said. "Morning." She swallowed heavily. Speech should not be difficult. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" A wry expression flickered across his face for an instant. "Fine," he said. He turned slightly so she could see Zangetsu strapped to his back. "Look who showed up overnight." "You won't need him today," she said. "Oh. I'll explain shortly. Are you hungry?" "Starved." "Follow me, then." They didn't speak much on the way to the dining room, and little more when the servants brought them breakfast. Every time Rukia tried to say anything beyond small talk, she'd look up to see him watching her. Something about it affected her stomach unpleasantly. He looked like he expected her to say or do something, but what that something was, she had no idea. Maybe he expected them to return to their easy banter of long ago. Maybe he expected something entirely different. Rukia felt as if there were some script she was supposed to follow, but she hadn't been allowed to read it. It had been easier yesterday, when her happiness at seeing him for the first time in so long had been enough. Now she kept stopping to think before she spoke, and everything that came out of her mouth felt wrong. "So," he said, when the servants took the plates away. "What's new in Soul Society?" She smiled into her teacup. "That's an awfully general question." "Well, what do you expect? A guy wants to know these things. Perhaps you could be more specific." He scratched his head. "Well, how is everything going? When did you make vice captain? How are Ganju and Kakaku and Hanataro?" "Things are going well, some time ago, and they are fine," she said. "The Shiba have moved again, but you should visit when you can. I'm sure they'd like to see you." "Yeah, maybe." He shrugged. "How's Rinji?" "He's fine, too." Ichigo made a face. "So he's fine, everyone's fine. I feel all up to date now. Do you want me to go over every detail? It has only been 5 years since last we spoke." "6, he corrected. "And it was the rest of my life, so it felt kinda long." He looked away. "I suppose so," she said quietly. He sipped his tea. "Hey, this is really good stuff. Byakuya springs for the best, huh? Since when are you such a connoisseur of tea?" He shrugged. "I got old. Tastes change." She gave him a long, measuring look. "You are not old now." That was a lie. He was old, now older than he looked, and far older than the clueless boy she'd once known. It showed in his eyes, a little, and she wondered about all he'd experienced in the time since she'd last seen him, and in the years before that, when their brief visits were reduced to words that sounded friendly and spoke of nothing that mattered. Hurry and finish, she said. We have to leave soon. She led him away from the Kachiki grounds and through several blocks of Siriidii before curiosity got the best of him. Where are we going? She glanced at him, but didn't stop walking. It will be some time before you officially become captain. Captain Hisagi has his own preparations to make before he takes up his new position, and you must learn about running a division. You will have assistance. But now that you are here, a reception has been arranged following this morning's weekly assembly of the current captains. Captain Yukitake was there to greet them as they entered the meeting room. Welcome, Ichigo-kun. He smiled warmly. It is good to have you finally with us. Captain Kyoraku was right behind him. Kurosaki, he crowed. Please tell me that big friend of yours will be next. Sorry, but last I heard Chad was still hale and hearty, Ichigo said. I think he'll live forever. Pity. He pouted. I owe that boy a drink. He has to be legal now. Rukia hung back as they drew Ichigo further into the group. She was the only vice-captain in attendance, and it was not her place to escort him further. She watched with apprehension as Yamamoto moved forward to greet his latest captain-to-be, but Ichigo shook the man's hand with no more than a hint of coolness on his face. It seemed that some wounds really did heal. From Ichigo's perspective, she supposed, it must appear that not much had changed in the Godai 13 since his first visit, as a Ryoka. Few changes in lineup since the Great War, though the battle itself had changed them all. But from the inside, Rukia had seen other differences. Things had to change. She watched his guarded expression, and wondered how long it would take Ichigo to understand. Hey! She turned around to see Renji. Looks like I'm late. Only a little, she replied, tensing. He looks okay. Less wrinkly. He nodded at Ichigo. Guess I should say hello. Renji, that you don't have to. Relax, Rukia, he said quietly. I'm just saying hello to an old friend. Oi, Ichigo. He raised a hand in greeting as Ichigo turned. Renji. He grinned. And here I thought they'd have kicked your butt out by now. Che, you wish. Though maybe I should run now that they're letting you in. He was smiling evenly, and Rukia relaxed a little. You've got some time. I've gotta get trained, apparently, Ichigo said. What's that gonna be? Do I have to kick your butt one more time? Renji snorted. You wish. No, Yamamoto will talk to you about it more later, but you're going to spend some time with each division, see how things are done, see how you might want to do things in yours. And you'll take some classes at the academy, maybe see if they can finally teach you some Kido. Back to school, huh? Ichigo sounded more amused than annoyed. Apparently his patience had grown since she'd seen him. I'll just tell myself it's like going to grad school. Rukia frowned. She wanted to ask what that was, but they almost seemed to have forgotten she was there. Ichigo looked more at ease than he had since he'd arrived. You better not do a crappy job, Renji said. That's my old vice-captain you have to follow. He made vice-captain before you did, Rukia pointed out. Yeah, and I made captain first, so what? Ichigo smirked. Shouldn't you be asking me to live up to you, then? Renji paused for a moment. Maybe. If you think you can. I guess we'll see. The gathering broke up before long. There was plenty of work for the other captains to be doing, despite Kyoraku's invitation to a lovely little bar he knew nearby, and once everyone had had a chance to talk with Ichigo, her brother had used very few words, people began to disperse. Renji nodded goodbye to her on his way out. Ichigo drifted over to her. So what now? They didn't tell you? No, I just figured you'd know. I see, she said. I suppose I can assist you. But I am not your minder, remember. Yeah, whatever. I don't believe you have any more official obligations today, she said. But I can escort you to your guest quarters. He nodded. Lead on, then. Not like I got much luggage. The winding path she took led them by another set of buildings. This is the academy, she said. I thought you might like to see it. Sure. He looked around as they walked. So this is where you went to school? Yes. A long time ago. Very long. The would-be Shinigami walking by in their crisp uniforms looked so young to her, despite the fact that her physical appearance was no older than most of theirs. It was something else, in their expressions, perhaps, that made them look, to her, almost like children. She could remember being that young, the turmoil of being more than a child but not quite an adult, but it seemed like the memory was from another life. What was it like? Tough. I suppose, she said. It will be easier for you. You will not have a full curriculum. What, don't want to tell me about your school days? Did you do as bad as when you went to my school? He smirked. There's nothing to tell. She glared. But. Ichigo. They both swung around in the direction of the voice. Who on earth would know him here? She squinted against the sunlight. A figure was dashing towards them, and he almost looked familiar. Kigo. Ichigo gaped. Rukia felt a distinct sense of déjà vu as she watched Asano Kigo leap at Ichigo in full-on glomp position. Ichigo dodged and sent Kigo crashing to the ground with a kick to the head. She couldn't help but be pleased that his reflexes were intact. Ah, it's just like the old days. Kigo grinned from his prone position. When were you going to tell me about this, Rukia? Ichigo demanded. I didn't know. You think I keep track of every new student in the academy? And don't be so rude. She extended a hand to Kigo to help him up. Ah, Kuchiki-san, as kind and beautiful as always. He grinned. I wanted to come say hello to you when I enrolled, but they keep us so busy, and no one believed I knew a vice captain. That's very sweet of you, Asano-kun. I'm sure I would have loved to say hello. She beamed. It had been a while since she'd gotten to practice her best sparkle. Right, Ichigo mumbled. I can't believe you're here, Kigo. You want to be a Shinigami? He shrugged. Why not? I had some power when I was alive thanks to you but never got a chance to use it after that first time. And being dead is a lot more boring than I thought. He smirked. Rumor has it that the new captain will be going to school, too. Don't worry, since we're old friends, I'll only make you call me senpai in front of cute girls. Ichigo turned to her. I want another afterlife. Hey. Perhaps I should leave you two to get reacquainted. She turned to Kigo. Kigo, do you know where the guest barracks are? He nodded. Good. If you could escort Ichigo there when you two are finished, I would appreciate it. Where are you going? Ichigo asked, frowning. I do have things to do, Ichigo. She raised a hand in farewell. It was good to see you again, Asano-kun. Ichigo, I'll see you later. She felt a pang as she left them behind. For all his complaints, she'd sensed a bond of friendship that still remained between the two men. Kigo, she had no doubt, would know how to talk to Ichigo even after all this time. She used to think she always would, too. But while some things never changed, others did. A little over 50 years ago. What do you want to do now? I have nothing in mind. Ah, come on. There has to be something better than just sitting around here. I am the guest, Ichigo. You are the one familiar with the area. There's not that much going on now. End of the weekend, people are recovering. Ah. Sounds like 11th Division after one of their parties. Ugh, don't make me think of them now. Want to get something to eat? Is it dinner time already? Time flies, I guess. Anyway, I could eat if you wanted to. Or not. I'm good for whatever. We would have to get up. Not necessarily. There's DLVRY. You would have to answer the door. Ah. True. So.no food then. Any other suggestions? Well. Rukia ran a finger down his side. We could dot again. Ichigo paused to consider. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. Rukia smiled smugly and climbed on top of him, kissing his neck as her weight pressed him into the sheets. He responded eagerly, running his hands up her thighs. She was rather impressed with how quickly he'd adapted to section. There was something to be said for positive reinforcement. The 2 days they'd spent together had passed in a blur, for all that they hadn't done much. Or rather, their activities hadn't had much variety from an outsider's perspective. They'd spent hours in Ichigo's bed, not minding that its small size forced them to be close in order to fit on it. For a while, anyway. A university student's bed wasn't the most comfortable place Rukia had rested, but she'd been reluctant to leave it, despite the way the sheets would end up twisted around them from all the motion. Ichigo had seemed equally content until the loud gurgles of his empty stomach had prompted her to demand he eat. Watching him faint of hunger would hardly be attractive. When they'd returned, the much-used bed seemed less cozy, somehow, and they'd experimented with enjoying each other in other locations. His desk. The shower. Once, the floor. For once, fate had smiled on them. Ichigo's badge alerted them to only one hollow the whole time. She'd never seen him defeat one so quickly, she'd barely had time to draw her own sword. She was learning all sorts of things about Ichigo that she'd never expected to know. She learned how he liked to be touched, the sounds he made when she found certain places like his hips, the tender spot just under the curve of his jaw, and 1 or 2 of the scars that ran down his chest. There was also the fact that for a recent version, he was pretty damn good in bed. He took her instruction well, and she supposed all that endurance training had paid off. She'd thoroughly enjoyed her visit, even if it meant she would walk awkwardly for a time. She couldn't recall the last time she'd come so frequently, much less from anything but her own hand. Afterward, she watched him doze for a while, resisting the urge to touch his face. Finally, she rolled over and sat up, waking him in the process. What's up? I have to go back, she said quietly. What, right now? You just got here. She smiled. I got here 2 days ago, Ichigo. Time goes by quickly. But I shouldn't take more time away from my duties. He reached up to slide her shoulder. I bet Yukitake would give you more time off if you asked. And what reason would you have me give? Oh. He made a face. The idiot still never thought more than 5 minutes into the future. Good point. Well, I could come with you. She shook her head. I know you have other commitments. I've taken enough of your time as it is. She leaned down to kiss him. It's been a wonderful weekend, she murmured. But we both have things we must do. Will you come back soon? Her smile slipped away. Ichigo. He looked away, and her stomach flopped unpleasantly at the sight. It's not a matter of not wanting to, she said. But I have many responsibilities. My time is not my own. Yeah, I got it. It's just that after almost killing you, you'd think they could cut you some slack. It is not that simple. Never is. They dressed in silence. Ichigo had some trouble locating his boxers, which some time ago she had flung who knew where, and finally settled on pulling a new pair out of his bureau. Back in her uniform, she tried to straighten out her hair, but it was a lost cause after spending so much time pressed against Ichigo's pillow. He walked with her to the window. She looked up at him. Ichigo, I want to tell you. Yeah. He looked so happy. Less scowly, anyway, which was almost the same thing. She hated herself for what she was about to say. In truth, it would have been better if this entire weekend had never happened. But they'd held back for years. If Ichigo's self-conscious admission after their first time was to be believed, then they'd both had these feelings for quite some time, even if they hadn't consciously acknowledged them. There was only so much temptation she could stand. I want to tell you, that you don't have to wait for me. He blinked. What? She huffed impatiently. Do I need to use smaller words? I guess. What do you mean, I don't have to wait? She struggled to find the words that would make sense to him. She sometimes forgot how young he was, but how could she forget that he would not see the consequences of their actions as she did? I mean that you don't need to feel obligated to me after our time together. I did not plan it, and I cannot hold you to any promises because of it. So you're ravishing and running, huh? I feel so used. He smirked. She fought the desire to punch him in the arm, then decided she didn't have to and did it anyway. I'm saying you are young. You have a life here, one for which I am not and will not be around to participate in or even see. You'll have the chance to date, do other things. I don't want you to hold back out of any sense of obligation towards me. Rukia, don't be an idiot. Before she could protest, he wrapped his arms around her. After what we just did, you really think I want to run out and date some other girl? No. She smiled, wishing she had his certainty. But you will. He dropped his arms from her waist. So should we just say this is it, then? Forget what happened. No, Ichigo, that's not what I said. She frowned. As if she could forget it. I'm saying that I treasure this time we've spent together. I would not be unhappy if it happened again. But in between, while I'm gone, you're free to do as you will. Yeah, whatever. He rolled his eyes. Do I at least get a kiss goodbye? He did, and more. Rukia didn't bother to try and explain it to him further. Eventually, he would understand. Ichigo was dead. In his much younger days, he'd thought that meant you went to a happy place, where you got to spend time with all your friends and with mommy, and there had been a passing thought about endless candy. When he got older, he just wanted to see his mom again, though the idea of eternal rest with nobody hassling him about his hair had been a nice idea. Then he'd learned what really happened after death, and he'd had decades to get used to the idea that he wasn't going to get any kind of rest. Still, the reality was turning out to be a bigger pain in the butt than he'd anticipated. Take this school thing, he thought as he walked out from a lecture. He'd been okay with the idea to start with. Aside from the hands-on experience of fighting the odd hollow over the years, it had been a very long time since he'd done anything Shinigami-related. It would be good to stretch those muscles. He'd expected something along the lines of a refresher course, maybe some private training. He hadn't expected to be thrown into a class that could have been accurately titled, Kido for Dummies. The teacher Kagura-sensei, a lump on the back of his head reminded him was strict, too. I understand you're to be captain, Kurosaki, she'd said without even the hint of a smile. And of course I will pay you the respect that is due when the time comes. But here and now, in my classroom, I can't treat you differently from any other freshman. Sit down. Even more embarrassing, Kigo was in a more advanced class for this subject. Ichigo hadn't even managed to do anything yet, beyond memorizing a bunch of crappy poetry spells, whatever, and exploding his textbook. Twice. He'd looked at that as progress. At least something had happened, right? Kagura-sensei had not shared this view. At least the swordplay class had been easier. Arms Master Hiroshi, a man with one eye, 8 fingers and more scars than Ichigo could count, had laughed and reassured him that Bankai more than served to test him out of all associated courses. He just needed to observe, see how the upcoming Shinigami were taught, and maybe pick out a likely candidate or two for his division. But this being the advanced class, most of the students had taken one look at his unsealed Zanpakuto and grinned. Ichigo found himself being dragged into the practice matches by the end of the first day. First one, then two, then half the class was fighting him all at once. Advanced or not, they were still nothing compared to any average seated Shinigami, and Ichigo hadn't had trouble. He had worked up a sweat deflecting their blows, though, and he'd had fun doing it. Hiroshi had sent him away with a standing invitation to return whenever he liked, and Ichigo had a feeling he'd just been drafted as the class TA. So school was a mix of okay and annoying. What was more annoying was the fact that he couldn't seem to pin down his original Shinigami teacher to tell her about it. Rukia had seemed suspiciously busy since he'd settled in, like she was trying to blow him off. Maybe it was a vice-captain thing. Whenever he stopped in to talk to her, if she was at the office at all, she'd smile, listen to whatever he had to say about his day, say nothing about her own, then excuse herself to get work done. He didn't even know where her private quarters were. It was really starting to bug him. It wasn't like he didn't have plenty to keep himself busy, though. He still had 10 of the 13 divisions to visit. He really wasn't looking forward to his day with the 6th. Oi, Ichigo. He turned to see Ikaku trotting towards him, a grin on his face. Yo. He raised a hand in greeting. What's up? Just came to see if you're done for the day. Hey. What are you looking at? Ikaku glared at a passing freshman, who squeaked and ran. Man. They get smaller every year, I swear. You got plans tonight? Ichigo shrugged. Not really. Well, you do now. You, me, Hisagi, Renji, Yumi were going drinking. That sounded like better evening recreation than the absolutely nothing he had planned. Sounds good. Ichigo grinned. You sure you should be taking an impressionable student, though? Don't be a pages. Ikaku punched him in the shoulder. Be ready in an hour or we're starting without you. He looked back over his shoulder and grinned as he took off. By the time they met up, Ichigo was even readier for a drink. You're sure it's okay I come? Kigo asked nervously. I'm just a student still. So? Ichigo said. You're a grown man, too. Besides, I say it's okay. That's like permission from a captain. I'm still not sure it's fair you get to go through the academy so fast, Kigo said. Homework isn't any more fun now than when we were kids. Tell you what. In your next life, you get stabbed through the heart and fight a war before you're 17, and the job is yours. He nodded as Ikaku and Yumachika walked up. Yo. Hey. Kigo burst out, staring at Ikaku. It's you. It's me what? He said. You're the one who stayed with us all those years ago. You invaded my house. You took my bed. Before the war. No idea what you're talking about, kid. That was a long time ago. Come on, let's get to the bar. Ikaku slung an arm around Kigo's shoulders and dragged him on. How's your sister? The Rukongai bar where they ended up reminded Ichigo, strangely enough, of one of his favorites from med school. Lively, with plenty of food and drink and barrels of laughter from other tables, but not so loud or crazy you couldn't have a conversation. Bartender. Ikaku barked when they found a place in the corner. Bring us some beers. And sake, Yumachika added. And sake, and keep 'em coming. He settled back and grinned at Ichigo. This is the only time I'm ever treating for a night, so you better appreciate it. Don't mind him, Yumachika said. He's just feeling magnanimous because he won at cards the other night. I kicked but is what I did. Remind me never to go up against you, Ichigo said, nodding at the barmaid as she brought their drinks. He took a swig. DMN, that's good. Haven't had one of these in a while. You should be grateful we snuck you off campus, young students. Yumachika smiled. Kigo grinned back and gulped his beer. Thanks, he said earnestly. They've got too many rules at the academy. We're not supposed to drink a lot. The teachers say it dulls our performance. Ikaku snorted. That's bullshit. I do better when I'm hungover. Gives you more fuel to give a beatdown and take it out on someone else. I'll remember. Kigo looked skeptical. You do that, kid. But Ichigo. When the hell are you gonna stop pussyfooting around there and join the ranks? Spare me. He rolled his eyes. I'm just brushing up on sheet and you know it. In any case, it's the fastest acceleration to captain in history, Yumachika said. It even beats Hitsugaya's record. I'm pretty sure I'm the only academy student with Bankai, that's for DMN sure, he said. I'm just glad they didn't want to try and make me do the full course load. I'd go nuts. Just be glad you finally kicked it, Ikaku said. I dunno how you could stand to get that old, dude. Ichigo shrugged. Past the time. Hey, where's Renji and everyone? Here. His voice boomed over Ichigo's shoulder, and he turned to see Renji, Iba, and Hisagi. Yo. Nice to see you waited, Ikaku. Beer waits for no man. Yeah, whatever. He squinted at Kigo for a moment, as if wondering what a student was doing there, but just shrugged. Shove over, kid. You didn't miss anything, Yumachika said. Ikaku was simply interrogating the new captain-to-be on his days at the academy. Yeah, how is that going? Iba grinned. Sheet, I don't know if I could go back to the academy. I've never gone before, it's not like I'm being held back, Ichigo grumbled. And I'm not there every day. I've been spending time out with the divisions, too. That's right, your trip around the Godii 13. Ikaku smirked. Probably hoping people rub off on you enough to make you a more conventional captain. We have those? Iba asked. My point is Ichigo's always going to be a freak since he couldn't do anything in the right order, Ikaku said. Gee, thanks. Be proud, man. I say FM, declared Ikaku. Tell old man Yamamoto to stuff his goodwill tour down his throat and take up your spot. Right now. Do things your way. You in that much in a hurry to get rid of me? Hisagi asked. You're not going that far. You can still kick Ichigo's but if he FS up your division. DMN right. Hisagi nodded. But I think you're being too tough on General Yamamoto. He's just trying to give Ichigo some help. It's better than starting up in post-war chaos like we did, right Renji? He shrugged. I guess. He's changed some, he continued. Things aren't like they were in the old days. He did reach out to the Vazards after the war, Yumachika pointed out, and turned to Ichigo. Whatever happened to them? Did you keep in touch? Ichigo shrugged uncomfortably. Not really, he said. They went off to do their own thing and I stayed behind. Didn't have much of a reason to get together once all the fighting was done. That was a memory he was never sure how he felt about. The appearance of the motley crew had heralded only trouble in his life, but they had helped him when he'd needed them, and Hirako had looked genuinely regretful behind his cocky grin as he'd waved goodbye for the last time. At the time, Ichigo had hoped they'd accept Yamamoto's offer of amnesty, even as he had the sneaking suspicion the old man had made it only because he knew they wouldn't. Guess I didn't fit into their club once I solved my problem. What can you do? Keeping a hollow in you, that's bullshit, Ikaku said. I never understood them. Who did? Yumachika finished his dish of sake and poured another. So, Ichigo. How is your little learning experience going? Did Captain Soifong have much wisdom to impart? Ichigo rolled his eyes. Gimme another drink before I start on that, he said. The beer flowed along with the conversation as they caught up. Truth be told, Ichigo hadn't really minded going along with Yamamoto's plans so far. As much as he'd learned about Soul Society from storming it as a teenager, the others seemed to forget that he still lacked the daily life experience of living there. Some things that they took for granted, he had no clue about. Like taking up a captaincy. After spending a day with Yamamoto and that had still been a little awkward, even after decades to calm the anger he'd once felt towards the man he'd come away with the feeling that being a captain involved lots of posturing about honor and leadership and piles of paperwork. For a man who'd survived over 2,000 years at the highest rank in a group of deadly fighters, Yamamoto spent a lot of time signing things. His day with the 2nd Division hadn't been much better. Soifong had looked distinctly irritated at having him shadow her all day. She'd answered his questions, but always with short, clipped answers. It especially didn't help that half the things he asked about were, according to her, classified information. Her vice-captain, some woman Ichigo didn't remember seeing before, was less prickly but busy with her own work. He hadn't come away feeling like he'd learned much. Then there had been meeting with Hisagi himself to go over how he ran things in the fifth and getting ready for the transfer in leadership, but that would take far more than just one day. Hisagi had been patient enough to make Ichigo feel a little steadier, but he was still glad he had some time before he had to take over and potentially fall on his face. It was nice to relax with these guys. There was one thing that was bugging him, though. As the evening went on, even Kigo seemed more at ease hanging out with a bunch of officers who severely outranked him, but Renji, who had never been anything but loud in the time Ichigo had known him, was keeping fairly quiet. He wasn't a wall of silence, but he was mostly listening to other people's stories and snickering at Ikiku's, and not offering up much himself. Hey! He elbowed Ikiku later, when Hisagi, Renji and Yumachika had succumbed to the trials of too much liquid and gone to take a PSS. A very drunk IBA had proclaimed himself Kigo's new mentor and dragged him off to hit on barmaids. Something bugging Renji? For an instant, Ikiku looked uncertain before composing himself and giving a noncommittal shrug. Dunno. Why you ask? He just seems quiet, he said. I know I've been gone a while, but him shutting up is new to me. You're just imagining things. Ikiku grinned. Captains gotta have manners, you know. And that's why you never wanted the job. Got it in one. He took another swig of beer. So, you've been back for a bit. Seen Kuchiki much? Rukia? He frowned. A little. She's been pretty busy lately, though. But she is a vice-captain now. You guys were pretty tight back in the day, right? Yeah, he answered quietly. Once. Not now. No. Not now. He set his half-empty glass down. I think I'm gonna get going. I hit a nerve or something? Ikiku asked. Sorry, man. But you don't have to go. Everyone's getting stupid drunk enough that a fight'll break out sooner or later. That's the fun part. Nah. Ichigo waved a hand. It's all right. Doesn't bug me. But I've got an early day tomorrow, and I don't want to be hungover. Say goodnight to everyone for me. If you say so. Later. The streets of Siriidii were quiet as he walked back to his quarters slowly, because he still only sort of knew his way around. He got his bearings as he approached the 5th Division headquarters. That was a good sign. If they were soon to be his, it'd be helpful to know where the heck they were. He squinted at a light in the window of the main office and headed that way. Hinamori sat at her desk, scribbling away at some report. He hesitated in the doorway, but she looked up at the sound of his footsteps. Hey, he said. Sorry if I interrupted you. It's no problem. She smiled politely. I'm here late a lot these days. Now's as good a time as any to take a break. She stretched her arms out, turning her neck from side to side to work out the KNKS. Oh. This what I've got to look forward to, then. He looked at the stacks of paper that surrounded her. She shook her head. It's just the transition, she said. Captain Hisagi has a lot to deal with, moving up to the Central 46, and you have your own studies to think about. Don't worry, I can handle it. Okay, he said, feeling a little stupid. Hinamori had been there when Hisagi had showed him around the division, but they hadn't really talked much. Now he wasn't at all sure what to say. It didn't exactly bode well for them working together. It wasn't that he didn't like Hinamori. Hell, he didn't even know her. How could he dislike her? He'd been surprised to hear that she would be his vice-captain. He hadn't kept up on all the details of what was going on in Siriidii after the warm months of recovery, and then school had occupied him, but the girl he remembered from the final battle had seemed broken and confused, barely able to accept what a fucker Aizen really was long after everyone else had. He would never have expected her to take any kind of command again. But here she was. She looked different from the Hinamori he recalled, calmer and quieter, no longer looking like she'd fall apart at the seams. The cute bun he remembered had been replaced with a neat braid down her back. "What are you doing back here so late?" she asked. He could see the long, thin scar that ran down her cheek as she turned to face him. "Just felt like taking a walk," he said. "Still figuring my way around this place." "I'm surprised you're not out with the others still," she said, smiling. "I remember when Hisagi was made captain. They were hung over for days." "Ah-ha." He fidgeted. This wasn't really a topic he wanted to go into. It brought up memories of the captain Hisagi had replaced, and how she'd felt about Aizen, but he wasn't sure how to get out of it. "I'm surprised he's leaving. Seems like he has a pretty good thing going here." Her face grew serious. "It was Captain Tosen," she said. "He made Hisagi believe so strongly in the importance of justice, and then after what he did that I think he wants to find his own kind of justice. Joining the Central 46 is one way to do that. I guess that makes sense." Her eyes were far away for a moment before she looked at him again. "Am I making you nervous, Kurosaki-san?" "Well, not really, I mean. It's all right," she said. "I did work with Captain Aizen. And I killed him." "You weren't alone," she said quietly. "Yeah. I guess not," he said. "But it's really not you. Or not just you," he admitted. "I'm still trying to figure out where I fit around here. Soul Society isn't what you expected it to be." He shook his head. "Nope," he said. "Not sure what I expected it to be, but no. I know what it's like to be an outsider," she said. "After the war it took a long time for everyone to recover. Me especially. I believed in Captain Aizen so much. As much as Hisagi believed in Captain Tosen. More. I kept believing in him even after the truth came out. That's what you're supposed to do for the ones you love, isn't it?" Ichigo could only nod. "When I returned to my position, people were strange," she said. "I know not everyone trusted me. I wouldn't have trusted me, either. So how'd you deal?" "Time," she said. "That's the only thing that could do it," she said. "You'll find your place. Just wait." "I guess I have plenty of it," he said. "And I still have to get through some classes." She smiled, and he felt some of the tension drain from the room. "I can't believe they asked you to do that. How are they going?" "I blew up my textbook the other day," he said. "Kidu ain't my thing." She made a face. "Don't say that," she said. "You can learn. It just takes a lot of practice. I can help you." "Really?" "Of course." She nodded. "Especially if we're going to be a team. Please, stop by any time. We can work on your Kidu, and I can introduce you to a captain's paperwork." She stretched again. "But right now I think it's time for me to put this away and get some sleep. Good night." He wasn't sure how late it was when he left the 5th Division and again tried to point himself towards home, but he felt more awake, lighter, somehow. He still didn't know quite what he was doing. But it was a start. A little under 50 years ago. The day after his graduation party, Ichigo swept through his apartment, cleaning up all the debris. He was going to have to move soon, and getting rid of the mess would make it easier to pack. When he was done, he opened his window for when Rukia arrived. It was a silly gesture, since she could just walk through the wall if she wanted, but it seemed rude not to do it. He sat down with a book he wasn't really reading and waited for her. Then waited some more. After a while, he threw the book down and went to make an omelette. Food was good, even if his stomach was jumping around like crazy. Food might settle it. The sound of egg frying was enough to drown out Rukia's light steps, so the first clue he had about her arrival was the prick of his senses in response to her approaching Ryatsu, followed by the touch of her arm as she slid it around his waist. "Hi." He glanced back at her. "Little late, aren't you?" Unexpected hollow attack. It couldn't be helped, she said. This ain't your district. I know, but I was in the right place at the right time. There is no point in waiting for the local Shinigami if I can be more efficient. She smirked. And you're done with school now. What do you have to do that a few minutes lateness would affect? Nothing, I guess. He poked at the omelette with his spatula. Nothing until med school starts. Pops keep saying to enjoy the time off before the, quote, true test of manly endurance, unquote, begins. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for your graduation ceremony, she said, sounding more serious. Our division has been quite busy lately, and Captain Yukitake has been ill again. Not your fault. He shrugged. You're a seated officer now. You've got important things to do. That's a good thing. I think so, she said. Through peripheral vision, he saw her looking at him curiously. Ichigo, what is wrong? Nothing. I'm just hungry. Liar. She jabbed him in the ribs, prompting a yelp. You think I can't tell by now? Tell me. Okay, okay. He switched off the skillet to make sure the food wouldn't burn. Sit down. She frowned, but allowed him to take her hand and lead her out of the kitchenette to his couch. He sat there, silent for a long moment before she attempted to jab him again but was intercepted by his hand. Stop that. Then talk. I will. Just give me a minute. She folded her arms over her chest. Take your minute. Yeah. He leaned on his knees. Rukia, I need to tell you something. Go ahead. There was this thing a couple weeks ago, he said. Mizuiro's girlfriend came to visit for graduation, and you know how his girls always travel in herds. And they wanted to go out and do some celebrating, but this one friend of hers didn't know anyone, so they came to drag me along and, he took a breath, I kinda went on a date with her. Silence. Nothing happened. He rushed to fill it. I mean, she was cute and everything, but we've got our thing whatever it is and I wouldn't do that to you. I didn't even want to go on the stupid thing, but are you listening? She was looking down, her hair falling in her face so he couldn't read her expression. When she looked up, she was biting her lip, and his stomach twisted painfully. Rukia, I'm sore. She started to laugh. Is that all? All? He repeated incredulously. Like it hadn't tied his stomach up in knots just to say it. Ichigo, you idiot. She shook her head and surprised him by jumping into his lap. I told you this would happen, she said gently. You made a choice, a good one, to live your human life. I cannot be around as much as you deserve. There is no reason you should not go out with your friends and girls just because I am not here. And I told you that didn't matter to me, he pointed out. And it wasn't much of a date anyway. I just thought, you know, you should be aware. Because I'm not trying to hide anything from you. She wiggled against his lap to make herself more comfortable and pressed her lips to his chin, and he felt his ability to speak coherently drain away. Did she try to kiss you? He tried to think past the speech block that was warm Rukia mouth. I think that she wanted to. But I just said goodnight. Amunchim. She moved her mouth to his neck before he shoved her away to look her in the eyes. This doesn't bother you at all? You said it wasn't much of a date. You know what I mean, Rukia. She sighed. You mean, do I want to think of you with other women? No, not particularly. She leaned in close. But we've had this discussion. We are from different worlds, and I'm not about to ask more from you than you can give. And I still say you're a moron, he said, stroking her hair. Be honest, Ichigo. You'd be happier with a girlfriend who could be around for the important occasions, graduations, weddings. Weekday dinners even. I'm happy with you. She said nothing, just smiled and kissed him. He kissed back and was just starting to get into it when she pulled away just far enough to speak. Ichigo, I want you to promise me something. What? If you do meet someone, she started, and pressed her hand over his mouth when he started to protest. If you meet someone you truly care for, I want you to promise not to hold back. Just be honest. He stared at her. Rukia. Promise me. Okay, I promise, he said. Even if I don't expect it to happen. His stomach still felt jumpy. Even after a few years, she still didn't seem to get that he couldn't just flip his feelings on and off like a switch. He couldn't just be normal, whatever that was. There were words on the edge of his tongue, ones he couldn't quite identify but felt, all the same, that he needed to say, but the unsettled feeling was too strong. Instead he pulled her close again and neither of them spoke for a long time. As much as Rukia respected and cared for her captain, she had to admit that being his vice-captain could be very difficult on days that Yukate's sickness kept him bedridden. It wasn't that she minded the extra work, of course. She was no slacker, and years of working with him had produced a system that made for an easy transition when she had to take up Captain Yukate's work. Occasionally, she wondered how her tenure as vice-captain could ever live up to Kayandano's, but in the end, her own abilities seemed to be enough. The captain was satisfied and the division ran efficiently. She really was happy to do whatever was required when the captain was ill. It was just that Sentaro and Kion were so loud when Yukatake was out. Puny girl. I'll make much better chicken broth for the captain. Stupid oaf, this is my healing recipe. Get your own. Rukia pushed her chair back from her desk with a sigh. I'm going to take this paperwork to the 8th. Sentaro looked up from where he was struggling to get out of Kion's headlock. But Kuchiki-san, I was just going to do that after I delivered the broth to the captain. Liar. Kion released him, but stomped on his foot. I was going to run captain's errand and take him his broth. Never mind. She waved a hand. Both of you make some for him, I'm sure he'll appreciate the extra. I'll take care of this. It's not a problem. She was tempted to use Shuunpa to escape but managed to restrict herself to a brisk walk, slowing only once she was out of earshot. It still didn't take long to reach the 8 Division's main office, but maybe if she walked the long way back they would be done shouting at each other when she returned. Captain Kuraku, I have these forms for you. Oh. Hello. I didn't realize you would be here. Hey. Ichigo raised a hand in greeting. Rukia-san. Kuraku practically chortled. Welcome, welcome. Kurosaki here is just visiting our division to learn everything he can. Yamaji was so wise to send him to me. Rukia avoided looking at Ichigo's reaction to that statement. I've got something for you, sir, she said. Since Captain Yukatake is resting today. She held out the sheaf of papers. Kuraku grimaced. More paperwork. Of course he sends it to me now, when he's not here for me to argue with about it. He sighed dramatically. I'll just put these away. Kurosaki, you can join me in a few minutes after you've had a chance to chat with Rukia-chan. She hesitated. Actually, sir, I need to. See you later, Rukia-chan. She blinked. Had he winked at her before sashaying away? Sorry, Ichigo said, looking embarrassed. If you need to be somewhere, feel free to take off. That's all right, she said, taking a step closer to him. He was a friend, sparing a few minutes for conversation with him should be more important than paperwork. I have nothing pressing. And I haven't seen you recently. How is your orientation coming along? Heh. That what they're calling it, he said. It's all right, I guess. The 6th year swordplay class likes taking me on all at once. It's kinda fun. I see. She smiled politely. And the others? It's been almost a week since I blew up anything in Kiddo. Anything I wasn't supposed to, anyway. Ichigo. She couldn't help but laugh. I don't know why that should surprise me. You've stormed the gates of heaven, but you can't use that power to master a few beginner's spells. It shouldn't be that difficult for someone of your power. Well, they're rushing me through all this. I'm sure that's the only reason. She felt herself relax. Perhaps this would be easier than she'd anticipated. You know, if you require outside assistance. I can get a tutor, I know, he said. But how would that look for a captain? They don't make Kenpachi take Kido class, you know. He made a face at the mental image, then slipped into a grin. But it's okay. Hinamori's helping me out. Oh. That's good, she said. Hinamori is not very good at Kido. She helped me stop the explosions, he said. And if we're going to run a division we need to get along. Might as well start now. I suppose that's true, she said, not sure what else to say. Hinamori was a master at Kido and it was good that he'd begun forging a relationship with his future vice captain, but there was something discomforting about Ichigo relying on another Shinigami's guidance, even if it had been decades since she herself had been his mentor. Speaking of which, he said. Isn't there something you're not telling me? Despite herself, Rukia felt her heartbeat speed up. Oh. Yeah, oh. I wanted to ask while we're talking about vice captains, why did you never tell me you were one? He looked almost hurt. Confused. It did not seem relevant. Bullshit, he scoffed. It had to be a big deal. It took how long just to get your brother to stop hovering and let you be seated? She glared. He had his reasons, she snapped. And he allowed my abilities to be judged fairly years ago. My promotion to vice captain was not a sudden occurrence. You know what I mean, he said. Even if I was getting pretty decrepit these last couple years, I still would have liked to hear about it. You could have stopped by. It has been longer than that. She looked away. Ah, he said. So you could have said something and you just didn't. What had they even spoken of on the occasions she'd gone to the living world these last few decades? How his family was. What hollows she had fought. Meaningless things. I didn't think it mattered to you. He was quiet for a long moment, watching her with disbelieving eyes. She couldn't read his full expression. Was he angry that she'd think such a thing? Or was it just surprise? But his fists were clenched tightly and he held himself oddly still. Rukia found herself stiffening in anticipation of possible angry words, at the same time feeling she might welcome them. Well, congratulations, he said at last. You earned it. Thank you, she said, not sure what else to say or where to look. I should get back to my division. Yeah, of course, he nodded. Take care. She sighed as she left the offices, not feeling any better now that she was away from his gaze. Stupid, she muttered. Small talk. It shouldn't be that difficult, and maybe it wouldn't be. If Ichigo didn't have the ability to look at her and make her feel like he could see right through her, even after all this time. She made her way back to the 13th Division offices slowly, by a roundabout route that took her near the headquarters of the 9th. Somehow, she wasn't surprised when Renji came around the corner to meet her. Yo. Hello. She nodded at him. Shouldn't you be busy working, Captain Abarai? As busy as you, Vice Captain Kuchiki. He shrugged. Felt you coming. Needed a break. I can let you go if you gotta be somewhere. Not really. She shook her head. Sentaro and Kion should have things taken care of. Aha. He leaned against the wall. How you doing? You've been pretty busy lately. Captain Yukitake has been sick. Almost like you're making yourself busy so you won't have much free time. And by that you mean what, precisely? She could have left, but there was no point in evading Renji when he was determined to talk about something. He shrugged again and took a spot beside her. Seen Ichigo lately? Yes. She narrowed her eyes. Just now, in fact. I figured, he said, not sounding happy to be right. More like resigned. The way you look. And what is that supposed to mean? Renji wasn't even looking at her. He sighed. You should talk to him, Rukia. About what? You know what. She winced. We have had this conversation already, Renji. I know, I know. He held up his hands. I'm just saying. You know how I feel about it. I do. Better than you do, I think, he said, a note of frustration in his voice. Look, I don't want to stick my nose in. It ain't exactly easy for me. I just don't like seeing you unhappy. I know, she said. But I'm fine. And it's not something you should trouble yourself over. He looked skeptical. If you say so. Anyway, Ranjaku was here earlier. She wanted me to remind you if I saw you that you promised not to miss the Women's Association meeting tonight. She bit back a curse. I don't suppose I have a choice about this, do I? Probably not. He shook his head. You know her. She'll drag you if she has to. I dunno what it is you do at these things that make em so important. If I told you, Matsumoto would kill me, she said. Or you. Or both of us. In any case, I should return to finish my work since I won't be able to stay late tonight. I'll see you later. Even though she'd long since grown used to the Shinigami Women's Association meetings, they were hardly her favorite thing, and in truth, she probably would have forgotten without Renji's reminder, which Matsumoto no doubt knew. She also had to know that, once reminded, Rukia's sense of responsibility would not allow her to skip the meeting. Rukia really hated that about herself sometimes. And so it came to pass that she found herself entering the room they used for their meetings at the same time as Yukino Tanabe, vice-captain of the 7th these past 3 years. Rukia-san. The younger woman grinned at her. Ready for the meeting? Hello, Tanabe-san, she said. I suppose. I am, Tanabe said. I have a few things I want to bring up. I'm so glad we have these meetings, aren't you? They can certainly be handy, Rukia said carefully, trying not to reveal her reluctance to even be there. Despite the woman's distinguished record as a Shinigami and her prowess with a blade, Tanabe sometimes struck Rukia as being still young and impressionable. She also seemed to look up to Rukia as a role model, having started out in the 13th, something Rukia wished she could discourage. Why don't we find our seats, she suggested. Soon they were all assembled, with Nanao officiating, despite Ichiru's technical role of president. Rukia paid little attention through the reading of the previous meeting's minutes, approved, Vice-Captain Kusajishi's request for an increase in the candy budget for the annual year-end party, denied, and the other usual opening nonsense. It wasn't until Nanao's listing of the final item on the agenda that sat up and began to listen. And now there's the matter of Captain-elect Kurosaki's induction party, which is to take place immediately following. What? Rukia looked up. His what? Nanao pushed her glasses up her nose in a gesture of annoyance at the disruption of her routine. His party, she said. It's traditional after a captain's induction. Surely you haven't forgotten. Ah, she said. No, I haven't. She hadn't, but she also hadn't given it much any thought. But why are we planning it? We're not, Nanao replied. At least, not the whole thing. But Captain Kairaku expressed interest in taking charge, and well, I just thought it would be better that we create a plan to present to him so he does not offer his own. I have to agree, piped up Isane. No disrespect to the captain intended, of course, but on some nights I can still feel the effects of the last party he planned. Rukia smiled for a moment, despite her own wince-inducing memories of the night in question. Yes, I see your point. Indeed. Nanao checked something off on the sheet she held. I suppose we'll just arrange for the standard festivities, then. Whatever, Soifong said, looking bored. Let's not make it too dull, Matsumoto protested. It's supposed to be a party. It has to have some life. Kion nodded enthusiastically. I suppose you have suggestions, then. Nanao said. Yachiru kicked her feet back and forth in her chair. Kenchan says every good party has a good fight. I don't think that would be appropriate, Isane said, looking doubtful. And Captain Unohana wouldn't be able to enjoy herself if she were on duty. Well, what's he like? Tanabe asked. Rukia-san, you know, don't you? Me? Rukia blinked, caught off guard for the second time. You know him the best, don't you? That's what they say. She rested her chin in her hands. To tell the truth, I'm terribly curious. To become a captain so soon, that's just incredible. Rukia looked at the younger vice-captain and wondered what she had heard. She had only been a student at the academy during the time of Aizen's war and hadn't been in any of the battles, much less been privy to the details. After so many years, she supposed it only made sense that the events that had taken place, and Ichigo's role in them, had become rumor and legend among the Shinigami who could only gossip and speculate instead of reminisce. It is, she said quietly. Incredible. So what is he like? Tanabe persisted. What kind of party would he want? Well. Rukia flailed for words. What could she say? That the last party she had attended with Ichigo had been a Living World Hospital staff party during his residency, one they'd left early in favor of his bed because she was due back in Soul Society in a matter of hours. I don't really know. Really? But I was told you fought quite closely beside him during the war. They used to tell stories. Back in the academy, they said he slew 100 hollows with just one attack. She turned pink. Though I'm certain that was exaggerated. Still, I've really wanted to meet him, but he hasn't been to our division yet. Rumors generally do become inflated with time, Rukia said. And I'm sure he'll make his scheduled visit soon. I hope so. Tanabe grinned. Is it true he never smiles and only scowls harder after a victory? Not exactly true. It wasn't, but the details of his rare, non-battle-maddened smiles and the way they made her stomach do flips were not something she wished to share. Oh, you know, Yukino-chan, Matsumoto interrupted loudly. The young heroic types are all false modesty and solemn faces. Just like my captain. But get some drink in them and they'll loosen up fine. We just need some good sake at the new captain's party. But not too much, Matsumoto, Nanao said sternly. You always say that, Nanao, and I always change your mind. I should hardly think. Rukia let out a breath and let the ensuing argument wash over her. It wasn't Tanabe's fault, she reminded herself. She hadn't been around in those days, so it was normal for her to be curious. The same upheaval would likely occur when the other human veterans of the war came to Soul Society. And Rukia had known Ichigo better than anyone. Who else would the girl question? Rukia-san. Kion touched her arms as everyone stood and began to filter out. Her sister stood beside her. Would you like to join Isane and me for a drink? There's a quiet bar in West 2nd she's been wanting to try. She hid a smile at the association of Kion with anything involving the word quiet. Thank you, but I'm feeling rather tired tonight, she said. Another time, perhaps. The sisters exchanged a glance. All right, Kion said. See you in the morning, then. Rukia made sure she was the last person to leave easier to avoid well-meaning people who wouldn't understand her sudden desire for solitude. So it was only through iron self-control that she didn't jump when a voice came out of the shadows. Rukia, you all right? She whipped around to see Matsumoto. How did the woman blend in with the scenery so well, with her stature? Perhaps it had something to do with how she always seemed to know the current gossip before anyone else. I am well, she managed. I thought after the meeting you'd be out with. Nah, Matsumoto cut her off. Well, maybe later. The night is young. But I wanted to make sure you were okay first. I appreciate the concern, but why wouldn't I be? Ranjaku smirked. Don't hand me that. Yukino might be too green to realize, but I'm not, she said. It's okay to be rattled by seeing an ex, trust me. I know. She ducked her head. I don't know what you're talking about. She was startled when the other vice captain responded by clapping an arm around her shoulders and dragging her away. Ha! If you can say that with a straight face, it just means you haven't had enough to drink, she said. And don't hand me that tired crap. Rukia stumbled, trying not to match the sudden change in pace. If you're looking for a drinking partner, I'm sure Captain Kiraku would oblige. No way. This is about female solidarity. Matsumoto paused. Not that you have to talk to me. But you should at least talk to someone if you want to avoid more awkward moments. Tonight won't be the last time someone asks you about him. Rukia opened her mouth to respond, then sighed and closed it. Once upon a time, she thought Matsumoto to be little more than another party hound, as if the Godei 13 didn't have enough of them already. Since getting to know her better, though, she'd learned that the woman's sharp insight could cut. It doesn't matter. I will just have to adjust. Aha. Why? Because I cannot expect anyone else to do it for me, she said stiffly. No, no. Matsumoto shook her head. Why do I know so many stupid people who insist on being stoic all the time? There are simpler options, you know. You could just tell him you still have feelings for him. She stopped dead. I cannot. Because you don't have them? Or because you don't want to? Why do I know so many people interested in telling me how to run my relationships, she muttered. Just giving some friendly advice. Matsumoto beamed. You can't fool me. Besides, you owe me for jumping in and getting Vice Captain Nosy off your back. Ah. So that was intentional. Of course it was. I know you Kachiki like to keep your walls up, but Rukia, we could all see it on your face. Would it really be so bad to at least talk to him? She hesitated. It has been too long, she said at last. So much has happened to both of us. I may not even know who he is anymore. What better time to learn? For a moment, she was tempted. After all this time, she could still recall with crystal clarity how he'd once looked at her. To think of him looking at her that way again. But how could she possibly expect he would? Ichigo's life had changed in far greater ways than hers had. Matsumoto must have seen something in her face. You don't have to run into his arms declaring your undying love. Just talk to him. At the very least, you might find a way to be friends again without dancing around each other like a pair of nervous virgins, she urged. If he's in butt, you can always hit him. Rukia laughed, and if there was a touch of bitterness in it, she chose to ignore it. I suppose that has been rather useful for him in the past. It works more often than you'd think. Still, that I shouldn't burden him with my feelings, she hedged. Matsumoto shoved her gently. When it's someone you care about, they aren't a burden, she said. And everybody knows he really cared for you. Just try talking to him. Maybe, she said. Maybe I could. Matsumoto cheered. Go, Rukia. Get your man. She shook her head. Thank you, Matsumoto, she said. Of all people, you shouldn't need to concern yourself with this. If it gets someone else laid, I'm happy to do what I can, she replied, grinning. And we're friends. Now go. Rukia felt somewhat lighter on her feet as she headed toward Ichigo's quarters. No matter what Matsumoto said, she was not going to proposition Ichigo. She had too much dignity for that. But even if it was impossible to regain what they'd once had, if they could just talk again like they used to, that might be enough for her. Ichigo wasn't home. She could tell even as she knocked on his door. His Ryatsu was more controlled than it had been as a teenager. It no longer saturated the environment, but it was still quite distinct, and she didn't feel it. She hesitated. It made as much sense to come back tomorrow as to keep looking for him now, but she wasn't sure how long this boost in bravery would last, and there was at least one more place he was likely to be. It was easy to follow the noises inside the 5th Division to where its only remaining occupants were. Truth and temperance, upon this sinless wall of dreams unleash but slightly the wrath of your claws. The sound of a small explosion followed. Okay. At least I got near the target that time, Ichigo was beaching as she peeked through the doorway of the training room. I still think it's the crappy poetry that's making me miss. How can you expect me to concentrate when I feel like a moron just saying the incantation? Hinamori laughed and patted his shoulder. You're doing better than you think. But you must learn to aim, or it won't be any use to you in battle. Not like I'm likely to use it there anyway, he grumbled, getting back into stance. Long as I have Zangetsu O. Rukia. He blinked in surprise as he noticed her presence. What are you doing here? Hinamori clapped her hands over her mouth as Rukia fished for a response. Oh no. The meeting. I completely forgot. I'm so sorry. That's right, your girl club thing. Ichigo snapped his fingers. Sorry, Rukia, my fault. This kiddo sheet isn't coming along real easy. You will learn it. Hinamori sounded exasperated. Give yourself time. Yeah, maybe, he said. Anyway, if you need her, take her away. That's all right, Rukia said, quickly composing herself. The meeting has finished. You didn't miss anything of great importance. Oh. What did you need, then? Ichigo asked. Don't fidget, she reminded herself. It is unbecoming. I wish to see if you would like to join me for tea, Ichigo. Tea? He looked surprised. Kinda late for that, isn't it? Only if you have no taste, she retorted. And I had nothing else to do. I thought it would be nice. It is, he said. It would be. But I should probably stick at this if I'm serious about getting any better. He gestured at the target on its stand. Maybe some other time. Of course. She swallowed heavily. Good luck. Thanks. He was already turning away as she left. It was only tea, she reminded herself as she made her way to her own quarters. He couldn't be expected to abandon what he was doing to drink tea with her. Especially since he looked happy. Satisfied. Like he fit in where he was, even if he was still learning. Like he didn't need her anymore. He was no longer an invader or an outcast. He would do well as a captain. That could be enough for her, it would be. As long as he was happy. That was all she'd ever wanted for him. Around 45 years ago. This late in the afternoon the small reception room of the doctor's office was empty, but that didn't bother Rukia. In fact, it made things easier. She slipped around front desk and down the short hallway to the examination room, where she knew the doctor would be. She peeked through the doorway to look at him and grinned. If he'd sensed her presence, he didn't show it, his back was to her as he fiddled with some items on the counter. Doctor things that she didn't really understand, Kiddo had always been enough for her. Excuse me, doctor, she trilled. But I've got this sharp pain in my leg and you're the only one who can help. He was scowling when he turned, but she could see the ghost of a grin at the corner of his mouth. Stop that, he said. I'm a pediatrician. You're too old to be my patient, even if you are incredibly short. Are you saying you'd refuse to help a woman in need? That's shockingly insensitive, Dr. Kurosaki. She stepped closer and smiled. Yeah, I've been called worse, he said. What are you doing here? In a jigai, even. Soul Society had some matters to discuss with Yoruchi-san, she said. I merely volunteered to be the envoy. Yoruchi, huh? She didn't say anything about that when we trained last week, he said. They still trying to coax her back? Not exactly. More like, a more formal alliance than has existed in the past. But that's done with, I've already been to see her. I thought I might as well visit you while I am here. Oh, I'm so glad to be considered, he scoffed. He leaned in closer. So, where's this pain? Ah. Yes. She hopped up to sit on the examination seat and then took his hand, guiding it up from her knee to just under the skirt she wore. Somewhere around here, I think. He looked at her with dark eyes for a long moment. I'm done with hours for the day. I don't have to return for quite some time, she replied. He shut and locked the door. You should come to dinner with me, he said later, once they'd dressed and straightened their clothes. She finished slipping her shoes back on. At my family's place, he said. Dad and my sisters and I were planning to get together tonight since Yuzu just got back in town. I didn't know you were gonna show up too, otherwise I'd have put it off until tomorrow. I wouldn't want to intrude on a family occasion. Idiot. He grabbed her hand. You know Pops thinks of you as family anyway. They'll be happy to see you. Besides, I don't know the next time you'll be able to come back, so I want to take advantage of the time you're here. She smiled. All right. Good. On one condition, she said. I get your dessert. He snorted. Yuzu's dessert? Nothing doing. You'll have to fight me first and semi-retired Shinigami or not, I can still kick your butt. Then I guess I better hurry. With that, she jumped up and scampered out of the room. Oi, oh I. Rukia. Ichigo was right. Isshin was thrilled to see her when they arrived. But then, battle situations excluded, she had rarely ever seen him in anything but a state of manic cheer. It was nice to see Karen and Yuzu again, too, both of whom Rukia still half expected to be children rather than the college-educated women they were. Daddy is so happy to have his favorite people back at one table. Isshin chortled as they all dug into their meals. My lovely daughters and beautiful adopted daughter and stupid son. Ichigo just rolled his eyes and stuffed his mouth with more rice. Yuzu, why is it that you've returned to Karakura? Rukia asked. A new job, she answered, swallowing and smiling. The one I had right after I graduated was nice, but I think I've outgrown it, and I like being closer to home. And so you are. Never fear, Yuzu, Daddy will always welcome you back to his manly bosom. Don't get used to it, Karen said. Yuzu, I still say you can stay with me while you find a new place instead of Fruit Loop here. Thanks, but I'm all right, Karen, she said. Your apartment is so tiny. I don't want to put you out. And it shouldn't be too long. My friend Yuko from university is helping me find one. She just moved to a new apartment a few months ago, so she knows the best places to look. Dinner continued that way, filled with pleasant chatter and none of the fistfights Rukia used to witness. Apparently Ichigo had matured enough for that, and after seeing his son fight in a war, Isshin no longer seemed to feel the need to test him physically. It was nice to be around, though she felt a pang at not being able to join in more fully. Her duties in Seoul society had kept her busy enough that her visits of late had been few and far between, and it was apparent that life went on without her. There were long PRDS of conversation during which she was silent, lacking knowledge of what people and events the others were referencing. It would be rude to constantly ask them to explain, though Ichigo made sure to include her in the conversation when he noticed her looking lost. After dinner, she joined Karen and Isshin for a game of cards while Ichigo and Yuzu volunteered to do the dishes. After being soundly beaten for the third time, she could play proper cards, just not these ridiculous human games. She went to retrieve Ichigo to take her place. Should bring her home more often, Ichi and I, she heard as she approached the kitchen. I wish I could, he said, up to his elbows in suds. Not up to me. Well, I like her more than she said. She was pretty, but kind of dull. I think Rukia-chan is much better for you. Yeah. Me too. Rukia coughed. Ichigo spun around, surprised. It's your turn at cards, she said, smiling. Trade you places? Yeah, he said after a minute. Sure. At the end of the evening, Ichigo was quiet all the way back to his apartment, from when they said goodnight to his family until he locked his front door behind them. Rukia, about what you heard. Doesn't matter, she finished. How many times have we been through this? You have a life, Ichigo, I understand. Yamagatami was a friend from the hospital, he insisted, grasping her arm and spinning her to face him. We hung out some. She was interested in Pop's practice, so she came over for dinner a couple times. It's not like it was even dating. I'm not gonna get serious with anyone else, you know that. Something twisted sideways in her belly. I know. Well, good, he said. As long as you don't forget. When do you have to go back to Soul Society? Before morning, she said. There's an important division conference early tomorrow, else I would stay. He leaned in, kissing her hard. Then, he said, we better make the most of it. It was well past midnight when she woke, either from the bright moonlight that shone through the window or Ichigo's heavy arms affecting her ability to breathe. She tried to sit up, but he just held her tighter in his sleep. Ichigo, she whispered, shoving at him. Ichigo, wake up. I have to go. He blinked slowly, awareness returning to his eyes. What? Now? It's only. It will be dawn in a few hours, she said, voice soft. He propped himself up on one elbow. Moonlight from the window cut across his face, revealing his serious expression. Stay. Ichigo, please don't ask that of me. You know I can't. She sat up, but didn't remove his other arm from around her waist. As soon as she pulled away, this feeling of warmth and safety with just the two of them would be broken. It's been 4 months already since last time, he said with frustration. When can you come back? I don't know, she said. I do the best I can, Ichigo. His head dropped, face once again hidden in the shadows. I know, he said. She leaned down to kiss him one more time, letting it last as long as she dared. Okay. Come back when you can. I promise, she whispered. It would have been just as easy to open the gate back to Soul Society in his apartment, but the way he watched her from the bed unsettled her, so after dressing and leaving his bedroom she walked for a few blocks. She was about to summon the hell butterfly that would take her home when a voice stopped her in her tracks. You're out late. Rukia turned to see a small black cat sitting placidly on her haunches. Yoruchi-san. You'll be tired in the morning. Yes. Well. She felt her cheeks warm. Ah, don't listen to me. I did the same when I was your age. Still do, she said. Jushiro won't mind. He covered enough for me back in the day. Is there something I can help you with? Rukia asked. Something else I need to tell Captain Yukitake. Yoruchi shook her head, an odd gesture on a cat. He knows how to contact me if necessary. I see. Then. I don't even know why I'm out here, Yoruchi sighed. It's none of my business. I am happy to speak with you, she said uncertainly. What was this about? Another moment of silence. You know I still train with Ichigo when he has time. She nodded. He still thinks of you as his teacher. I know. Sometimes I think that boy will never grow up. A whisker twitched. We don't train all the time. He puts more energy into his practice than his father did, and I'm not always at Kisuke's. But if I had to guess, I'd say I see him more than you do these days. Rukia closed her eyes for an instant. I have already discussed this with Ichigo. With my duties, I cannot. I know you can't, said Yoruchi, sounding surprised. Of course not. Perfectly understandable. Life as an exile isn't everything it's cracked up to be, though it suits me. I just want to know something. Golden eyes fixed on hers. What are you doing with him, Rukia? If you're asking what kind of relationship we have. Ha. No. I know that, she said. I've had enough time to see, and Ichigo isn't exactly subtle. I've had a lot of time to see things. The weather shouldn't have been affecting her jigai, but Rukia felt cold. What are you saying? I see the way he gets when you leave, when you've been gone a long time, Yoruchi said. He puts on a smiling face for you because when you're with him, he's happy. It's after you leave that he changes. That boy is always waiting for you. He shouldn't be. I've told him not to. I don't want him to make any promises to me when I can't do the same. I understand what you're trying to do by giving him a no-strings relationship, Yoruchi said. But you should know better. He feels guilty if he even looks at another woman, and it's nothing against you, but he does look. He can't help it, he's a man and he gets lonely. He doesn't let himself do anything about it, but he still feels guilty. I imagine it makes you feel better about yourself when you get to forgive him without question. Yoruchi-san. Don't say it's no strings attached, Yoruchi said. It's not. You have that boy wrapped up like a puppet. Rukia stared. She couldn't seem to form words. And you? Are you going to remain faithful to him in Soul Society? Of course. She snapped, voice returning. Then why can't you accept the same from him? It's not the same. He has years of this life left to him. I can't take that away. Everyone takes from each other. But you should think about what you're giving him back. This isn't the only way things have to be. She shook her head. I'm not telling you what to do. It's not my place, even if I'm very bad at staying in my place. But whatever you do, do it with honesty. She stood and padded off into the darkness. See you around, Rukia. She stood alone in the street for a long time. A small part of her wanted to go after Yoruchi, tell her she was wrong, and why. She loved Ichigo, and he loved her. Should anything else really matter, as long as that was true? Except that other things did matter, and the rational side of herself couldn't forget it. She'd felt it herself, many times now, though his smiles and touches allowed her to set such thoughts aside. But she would continue to miss out on his life, waiting to be told what he'd been doing instead of experiencing things with him. They lived in separate worlds. He'd tried to jump the gap and succeeded for a time, but now, at this moment, they'd never felt farther apart. And they would not grow closer together. She wanted to ignore Yoruchi's words, or to set them aside and consider them later. Knowing her, she hadn't intended to push Rukia to drastic action, just make her think. But Rukia had thought about this before, and convinced herself to do nothing. Because Yoruchi hadn't said anything she hadn't already known. And all the while, she kept hurting Ichigo. She made her decision. Ichigo had fallen back asleep. He lay sprawled on his back, snoring lightly. She paused before shaking him, her vision blurring around the edges. This sight would have to last her for a very long time. Ichigo. Wake up. He opened his eyes, smiling when he saw her. She steeled herself against the rush of warmth this brought her. You're back. Ichigo. Yeah. Come back to bed. He reached out to touch her. She stepped back. His smile faded. Ichigo. She took a deep breath. This must end. What? He sat bolt upright. What do you mean? This. Us. We can't do this anymore. What are you talking about, Rukia? He scrambled to get out of bed and reach her, never minding the fact that he was still naked, but her voice rang out sharply, stopping him from coming closer. Don't. I don't understand. He shook his head. Is this some kind of sick nightmare? You just left and everything was fine. What happened? Did Soul Society do something? No. I haven't returned yet. And things weren't fine, she said. They haven't been fine for a very long time, Ichigo. And it is my fault. I should have known better. Without me it will be better for you. You're full of shit. He gestured angrily. If you don't want to be with me anymore, just say so. Don't tell me you think you know. What's best for me? It's my life, Rukia. My decision. No. It is not. She forced herself to look him in the eye. Goodbye, Ichigo. He tried to stop her, she was certain. He was sleepy and slow on his feet and only human, and she was gone before he could stop her. She was sure that if she waited a moment more she would see him behind her, trying to reach her before she opened the gate. She was sure of this. But she did not see it. She never looked back. After 77 years of life and a month or so of death, Ichigo came to the conclusion that he never had and never would understand women. Exhibit A, Kuchiki Rukia, Enigma Extraordinary. Maybe there was something to this tea thing he didn't understand. Maybe when a noble invited you for tea, it really meant a whole DMNT ceremony, and turning down the invitation was some terrible faux pas they never told you about because you were just supposed to know. It was the only reason he could think of for her current behavior. She'd looked a little upset the other night, a fact that hadn't really registered at the time. He'd been too focused on getting this one Kidu's spell to work for him. He was close, damn it, and it felt like if he could just do this one right, the rest might fall into place. Probably wishful thinking, but stubborn bullheadedness had been helpful in his past training, so he was willing to go along with it. He'd been a little distracted when Hinamori started giggling. "What's so funny?" he asked. She shook her head and put a hand over her mouth, but a few soft giggles crept through. "Nothing." "Really, go on. It's not easy to concentrate when you're laughing at me." "What is it? Did I miss some kind of private joke between you and Rukia that I don't get because I'm a guy?" "You could say that," she said, shifting into a thoughtful expression. "I don't suppose you're gonna let me in on it." She shook her head. "Sorry, that's something you'll have to work out for yourself." "Right. If you say so." There was Exhibit B, his own vice captain. He still wasn't sure what had been so DMN funny to her, though in a way it was nice to see her laughing. She didn't seem to do much of that. Even while observing this, he was still trying to figure out Rukia, the perpetual women make no sense Exhibit A. He'd thought maybe she'd want to do the tea thing the next day, but she hadn't been around, and when he'd gone looking for her at the 13th, the pair of loons she worked with told him she'd gone back to Byakuya's estate for the evening, and almost fellow captain or not, he didn't feel like dealing with that guy. He'd figured he'd get to talk to her at today's weekly meeting of the captains and vice-captains. Hisagi was still running the 5th, but it made more sense for Ichigo to go to stuff like this than to sit on his butt until the day the transition went through. He didn't have a lot to say at the meetings, but then, it seemed like no one else did either. Mostly everyone practiced their best stick-up-the-butt posture while Yamamoto talked. It didn't help that Byakuya stood almost directly across from him. Now there was a man born to do the stick-up-the-butt posture. He caught up to Rukia after the meeting when she was about to leave with Yukitake. "Oi, Rukia. Got a minute?" She glanced at Yukitake. "I'll be there in a minute, sir." He nodded and moved away. "What is it, Ichigo?" She didn't sound entirely unfriendly, but she wasn't radiating warmth either. "Sorry, I was busy the other night." "That's all right," she said. "It wasn't important. I went to sleep instead." "Oh. Okay. So. Yes. So, you still want to have tea, or something? Perhaps." She looked away. "Sometime. I have to go now." She didn't look back as she trailed after her captain, leaving Ichigo to stand there feeling stupid. She hadn't exactly been rude, but he was left with the distinct sense of having just been blown off. He was still standing there awkwardly when he heard a familiar voice. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Renji chatting with Yamamoto. He waited until they were finished, then started toward him. Renji glanced at Ichigo and tried to walk past him on his way out, but Ichigo clapped a hand on his shoulder to stop him. "Oi. Renji." The captain's eyes flicked sideways. "What?" Ichigo frowned. "Nice to see you too." "I'm busy, kid. Got places to be. You'll find out when you're official." "What do you need?" "Nothing really. He shrugged. Just curious if you knew what's up Rukia's but. Why? What did she say? She just seems distant. Kinda like I set her off but she doesn't want to say it. Renji looked away. If you seriously set her off you wouldn't have to ask me. You know Rukia. I guess, Ichigo said. You sure? Yeah. Look, I gotta run. See you around. Ichigo watched him go, feeling like he was missing something twice over, Renji's own unusually reserved manner doing anything but reassuring him about Rukia's. But if he didn't get going to change and head over to the academy, he'd be missing class next. He actually didn't mind going to class too much lately. With Hinamori's help, Kido was going better. Fighting with the swordplay classes was always fun, too, even if he couldn't go all out. The only bad part was the way some of the first-year girls were starting to look at him in the halls. They traveled in packs and tended to giggle when they saw him coming. It had been a long time since Ichigo was in school, but he knew this wasn't something he enjoyed. Kigo probably would have been ecstatic, though, or maybe jealous that Ichigo couldn't redirect their attention his way. He'd barely stepped onto academy grounds before someone behind him poked him sharply in the ribs. Hey, you! Which way to the cute girls? Hey, watch it! He rubbed the sore spot as he turned. Look, I don't know what the F are you doing here? Kurosaki Isshin grinned at him. What? You act like you've never seen a Shinigami in training before, kid. And what are you wearing? He pointed accusingly at the blue and white academy uniform that his ex-captain father wore. Daddy is incognito. Do you like it? He pulled at his clothes. It's tighter than I remember it being, but perhaps I just borrowed them from a skinny fellow. I have got to be imagining this. Ichigo backed away. Aizen is alive again and it's an illusion. You're not really here in stolen clothes trying to pass yourself off as a student. Well, you never know, he said. It's better to blend in just in case. I'm long since finished with Siriidii, but I hear there's an opening for a new captain. I don't want them to get any ideas. There's not an opening anymore, moron. Oh. What poor BSTRD did they pick? Me. And you bring pride to the family name, my son. Isshin clapped him on the back so hard he almost choked. Kid, did you really think I didn't know? How would I know one way or the other? I didn't know where you were. For all I knew, you weren't even in Soul Society anymore. Long-distance calls are expensive when you're dead. He jerked a thumb over his shoulder. Want to go somewhere else to get away from your fan club? A trio of girls was huddled nearby, watching them. I was going to class. Ha! That's my son, the studious one, Isshin said. Come on. You're going to be a captain. This class business is just a formality so old man Yamamoto can justify your promotion in his mind. Besides, part of being captain is knowing when and how to get out of the boring stuff, and that's something I can definitely teach you. Let's go. It wasn't hard to find an empty training room, where Isshin promptly plopped down on the floor. So, he said. You're dead. Welcome to the club. Sorry I didn't try and contact you, Ichigo said, sitting across from him. They don't waste any time giving you something to do here, so there was a lot going on. Don't worry about it. It's likely you wouldn't have been able to find me even if you tried. It takes time to master the Hell Butterfly's tricky little BSTRDS and I've gotten used to dodging them. It took Shunsui enough time to find me as it was. Still. Ichigo shrugged. What were you doing, anyway? Even the dead need doctors, especially in the outer districts of Rukongai, he replied. I go around and see who I can help. You could have stayed in the living world. Started a new clinic somewhere else. Sandal Hat would have helped. Yeah, maybe. Isshin tilted his head back. But I didn't go to the living world just to escape Soul Society. I went for your mother, and I stayed for you and your sisters. I stayed as long as I could for the grandkids before I seemed a little too old. Eventually you have to let go. Maybe I wasn't born Kurosaki Isshin, but it's who I am now. Starting over with some fake identity and a younger Jigai wouldn't seem right. Yeah, Ichigo said quietly. I get what you mean. How is everyone back home? Doing okay as far as I can tell, he said hesitantly. It wasn't that he didn't care about the ones he'd left behind in the world of the living, but so much had changed for him since he'd died that it felt like it had been years since he'd seen them, not weeks. Towards the end I was sick. Sleeping most of the time. So I don't remember a whole lot. But before that they were fine. Good, good. Isshin nodded. It will be nice to see your sisters when they, arrive. Hopefully not too soon. Their turn to worry about kids and grandkids now. Speaking of which. A grin spread across Isshin's face. Ichigo gave him a blank look. Speaking of what? Grandkids. You got a pass for being frail and wrinkly these last few years, but now you're strong and virile and you haven't given me your fair share. Get ready to wait a long time, old man. He snorted. I've got more important things to do than trying to find someone to help with that. Get a pet or something. He turned partially away so his father couldn't see his face. The emotion stirred up by this topic was raw enough he couldn't hide it completely. It's not as if you'd have to look very far, Isshin said. How is dear Rukia-chan, anyway? Dad. Ichigo let out a breath. Please don't ask me about her. Why not? He looked concerned. Is she ill? No. She's fine. And she's not going to give you grandchildren, either. We're not like that. Not anymore. It wasn't the first time he'd said these words, to himself or to someone else, but he could still feel something in his chest grow tight as they came out of his mouth. Isshin waved a hand dismissively. I know you kids had your problems in the past, but it's hardly a long-distance relationship anymore. It hasn't been one for a long time, either. She's the one who broke it off, Ichigo said sharply. A very small part of him welcomed the man's optimism, but for the rest of him that lived in reality, it was the last subject he wanted to discuss. It doesn't matter anyway. We're friends. It's been too long since we've been anything else. But you waited for her. No, Ichigo said, and closed his eyes briefly. I would have. But that's just how things went. There was a small smile on Isshin's face. What? Oh, nothing, he said, not bothering to try for a more serious look. You just remind me of how foolish I was at your age. Ichigo eyed him warily. Remember as much as you want. Let's just drop it. So are you ready to become a captain? Probably not, Ichigo admitted, relaxing as the conversation left dangerous territory. But I'll figure it out. That's my boy. I'd have to smack you around if you said anything else. But you've got to remember there are certain rules for handling your fellow captains. They've all been doing this longer than me. They should be able to handle themselves. Ha! There's your optimism. You must have gotten it from your mother. This is Soul Society, my boy. We live on top of each other for hundreds of years at a stretch with not enough new faces at the top. You better believe everyone knows everyone else's business, but there are ways of coping. He held up a finger. Number 1, Yamamoto's good at the overall leadership once he remembers to pay attention, but for the day-to-day crap, just let him talk and act like you're listening and then go back to your division and do what you want. They say it's better to ask forgiveness than permission, but I never bothered with either. Should I be taking notes here? Number 2. You can trust Kyoraku Shunsui with your life but not anything resembling good gossip, he said. Jushiro is more circumspect. So is Unohana Retsu, but be sure you never give her reason to be angry with you. That's very important. Got it. As for the rest, Isshin frowned in concentration. I didn't know him well when he was under Kasuke, but don't bother with that Kuratsuchi BSTRD. And Byakuya, if you handed him his but at 16 you should be fine now. He moved to stand up. Hey, where are you going? Away. You said yourself you had a lot to do. And Shunsui owes me a drink. Several drinks, actually, but who's counting? You are, Ichigo said. You sure? It's good to see you, Pops. He grinned. We've got an eternity to catch up, Ichigo. I'll be around. After the impromptu reunion with his father, Ichigo's next 2 days were blessedly normal, just classwork and division preparations with Hisagi and Hinamori. Things were busy enough that he found himself looking forward to the break of spending a day with the 13th Division. When he arrived at the Lakeside Division headquarters, Captain Yukitake was outside, sprinkling fish food over the railing. Good morning, he said, nodding at Ichigo. I like to watch the koi eat before starting the day. It's very relaxing. He looked down to see a crowd of fat fish jostling for breakfast. Seems like, he lied. Yukitake smiled. Shall we? Sure. Rukia was already at her desk, scribbling at a stack of paperwork as they passed through on the way to Yukitake's private office. Good morning, she murmured, barely looking up. Hey, he replied, a little annoyed at the distracted greeting, but then, Rukia putting her job before all else was nothing new. She works too hard, Yukitake said as they entered his office and sat down. But I can't say I'd do as well without her. A good vice captain is a blessing, Ichigo. You're lucky to have Hinamori. She's great, he said. We've been working together some. Sometimes I think she should be the one getting promoted. She has a better idea of what the hell she's doing. There's more to being a captain than paperwork, Yukitake replied. Though sometimes it doesn't feel like it. You'll find your way. I guess that's what I'm here for. He chuckled. If you gain more confidence from spending time with all the divisions, then I'm glad, but you really shouldn't worry. This whole rotation is more about Yamamoto than it is you. Ichigo raised an eyebrow. Oh really? Of course. No one's ever become captain so fast, not even Hitsugaya Toshiro. Then again, no one's ever become a Shinigami decades before death. But who would you serve under? You're clearly overqualified for anything less than captain. This allows Yamamoto to feel better about such a breach of protocol. So basically I've been wasting everyone's time. Never. There's always benefit to be gained from sharing knowledge. But don't underestimate yourself, Yukitake said. In any case, you're free to leave if you'd rather spend your time elsewhere, though we're happy to have you. Ichigo smiled. I think I'll stay. He'd wondered how much active work Yukitake did as captain, considering his illness, though Ichigo knew, having seen it himself, that the man was a powerful force in battle. Watching him at work, he still didn't seem to do a lot. He didn't rush around barking orders, though sometimes Sentaro and Kaione did, and even then the barking was mostly directed at each other. But somehow, things worked. Yukitake finished with a pile of documents just as a courier came to pick them up. The training schedule he'd devised for the different squads had them rotating between tasks smoothly. It put Ichigo in mind of a talented juggler who used little motion but kept everything in the air. He only saw Rukia once or twice as she stepped in to drop something off with Yukitake or ask him a question. In late morning, the sounds of squabble heralded the return of Sentaro and Kaione. Captain! They burst in shouting. Captain, I brought you this healthy lunch that I made. The midget got the idea from me, Captain, here, take mine. Oh, no, Yukitake laughed at the bento boxes being waved in his face. They look so nicely prepared, I couldn't possibly choose. Thank you both, but actually, I was feeling rather tired and thought I'd spend my lunch resting. The two froze for a moment before leaping back into action. Captain, I'll get your futon ready and make sure it's nice and fluffy. No way, I'll do a much better job of preparing a nice rest for Captain. They blew out as quickly as they'd arrived. That should take care of them for a while, Yukitake said brightly. Ichigo grinned. Nice trick you got there. I try not to overuse it. However, I do have some business to attend to with Shunsui over lunch. Why don't you and Rukia take these and enjoy yourselves? He gestured at the bento boxes that lay abandoned on the corner of the desk. Ichigo blinked. She looked pretty busy. All the more reason for both of you to take some time off. I insist. Kuchiki. He called. Immediately she appeared in the doorway. Yes, sir. Would you mind sharing lunch with Ichigo-kun? I'm afraid I'll be occupied for an hour or so, and it would be a shame for Sentaro and Kayon's work to go to waste. She hesitated for a moment before smiling. Of course, sir. Ichigo followed her wordlessly, eyes on her back as she led him to the edge of the division grounds, finally settling down beside the bank of the small, lazy river that flowed through the area. Here. Of course, she said, already unpacking her bento. Were you expecting a formal dining room? No, he said, dropping down beside her. I thought you might, though. I grew up in the streets of Rukongai, fool. Back then, this would have been formal dining. She took a first delicate bite of rice without looking at him. Her movements were stiff and precise, like she couldn't quite relax. Aha! He pulled the top off of his lunch and inspected the contents. The lunch looked delicious. Yukitake was lucky if his subordinates tried to feed him like this every day. But Ichigo didn't feel like eating just yet. Rukia, is something bothering you? She lowered her chopsticks and looked at him for the first time, eyes revealing nothing. Why should I be bothered? I don't know. He stabbed at his bento. I keep getting the feeling you're upset or something. If it's something I can help with, I want to. She seemed to consider this, giving him a long look before turning back to her lunch. It isn't you, Ichigo, she said. I've been very busy lately and I'm tired. I apologize if I put you ill at ease. Don't worry about it. He took a bite. You could delegate some of the work, you know. If Yukitake didn't even have a vice captain for a bunch of years before he snagged you, those other two have to be used to doing a lot more. Perhaps. She nodded, looking thoughtful for a moment. Their enthusiasm should not become an excuse for me to neglect my responsibilities. But it is nice to rest. She looked at the water flowing past their feet. We used to come here for lunch when I was new to the division. This place holds many good memories for me. Ichigo chuckled. What? Just trying to picture you as a nervous rookie. We all have to start somewhere. I know, he said. But even back when I was still a kid, you seemed like you'd always been on top of things. Or at least, that's what you wanted me to believe. I had to set an example, she said. Or you would have frozen in fear and let the hollows run rampant. He snorted. Not likely. I did just fine. With my help, yes. We got the job done, didn't we? She smiled. We did. Maybe she really had just been busy and distracted when he tried to talk to her at the meeting the other day. Rukia seemed a lot more relaxed as they ate and chatted. Once she finished with her lunch, she